You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Just a heads up, this episode is brought to you by my book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, which has been listed as one of the best screenwriting books of all time by the Book Authority. If you're looking for something that reveals the secrets of screenwriting in an easy to understand and engaging way, then this is the book for you. You can find The Guide for Every Screenwriter at thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com/books. Now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. I have a pretty awesome guest today. She's a multi-Emmy nominated TV writer, Pamela Douglas. She has written the book, Writing the TV Drama Series, which I actually read. It's in my collection. I'm even going to be quoting this book in the next edition of my book. So Pamela, it's really great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're just going to talk about, writing for television in general, because I think it's definitely changed, especially post-pandemic. But before we get into all of that, let's just get a little bit of your origin story and what brought you to writing this book.
I felt there was a real need to speak to the realities of what the television industry is and how one becomes a writer. Long ago, when I started the first edition of this book, way back in 2007, or 2005, even earlier than that, I had been teaching at USC for a long time. And the students were learning about writing feature films and getting out of school, even master's degree students, and discovering that they didn't have a clue about what their careers really would be, because most of the work is in television. And it's, while it shares some things in common with theatrical features, much of it is new and expansive.
You get a lot of writers out there that they write the feature, they try and sell the feature. Maybe they even option the feature, they make some money out of it, but then it's almost like they're starting from square one again. They have to go back to networking. It's hard to get steady work. Getting steady work as a writer is really, in television, like you said, getting on staff. I know a lot of writers will come up with really interesting pilots, and they will really try and pitch that pilot, write the show, create the Bible and all of that. And I'm sure that's just as difficult as it is to get known in the TV world. Is it better to try and get on staff?
Yes. It's a fantasy. It's a pure fantasy to think somebody who has no credits and no experience in the industry is going to create an original television series, especially if it's a big budget, full-length series, and sell it and run it. That doesn't happen that way. It's just not true. That doesn't mean pilots aren't worth writing. They are absolutely worth writing. They are actually the coin of the realm in terms of a sample. So you must have a pilot or 2 or 3 pilots, so people can see your original voice and that you understand the medium. So absolutely go for it, write your pilot, but that pilot is used to get you on staff, to get you on the ladder,
right? That
will later bring you to the point where after you've had experience on a show, you can then go ahead and pitch your pilot or collaborate with somebody to actually get it made. But you really need to work in the industry first.
What about writing spec episodes? I know there's a lot of writers out there that will write spec episodes for shows, trying to use that as a way to get on staff. Does that ever find success?
Well, that's a good question. Spec episodes are required for the fellowships. Which is the primary way of getting into the industry now. All of those many award programs that are offered by every network and many other organizations will require a pilot and a spec episode.
Gotcha.
You're not going to sell your spec episode to a show. Not only that, but the experience of speccing an episode is a great learning tool, and you should do it. but you'd never want to show that spec to the same show because they will know what's wrong with it. Whereas some other show may just say, oh yeah, I've seen that fits. Because it's demonstrating that you understand the way the show works,
Right.
that you can catch the voice of characters that are not your own invention. And that's
Yeah.
a skill in its own that you do want to show.
Yeah, being able to write in someone else's voice is exceptionally difficult writing. If you're able to pull that off through hard work, then yeah, you should be able to use that spec and hopefully impress a few people and get into one of these fellowships. I know HBO has a fellowship, Disney has a fellowship, so they are out there. They are competitive. It's hard to get in there, but it is definitely one way of breaking in. When it comes down to writing your own TV show, let's say that you have had the opportunity to get on staff or some kind of a position in a writer's room where you can work your way up. What are the essentials of writing a TV drama series?
Well, honesty is on top of the list. Even if you're writing for a show that is based in some degree of fantasy, or some characters who are unlike you. By honesty, I mean not falling into imitating or the predictable.
Right.
Go for what is true insight into the way people speak, into the way people react, into who people are. And it's not a question of, there's this old phrase, write what you know. And I think that's the wrong phrase, because if that was really true, no one could ever write about ancient Rome, for example.
Exactly.
Dig up an ancient Roman. So it's not that, but it's right. It's not right what you know, but right who you are in the deepest, most universal sense. So be true to the humanity that you have and to your insights and your experiences. And then you'll be able to bring something to the work that's fresh and that's yours. Everybody's got certain things in common, and to break out of the pack, I think your own truth is the way, and that's true. That's no matter who you are and where you're from. Don't try to blend. You need to. When I say be unique, I don't mean be weird.
Right.
I mean be
original.
True. Original. In an honest way.
Yeah. I think authenticity is a big thing right now in television. When you see these writers out there writing pilots and they're pitching them, one thing that I've noticed and others have made light for me is that they always want to know your personal story. I almost feel nowadays when you're trying to pitch a story or a script of your own, they want to know what you have to do with it. Whereas, I mean, traditionally you could just write an interesting and unique story. Now they want it to feel personal. Is this a change that you've noticed in the industry?
I think that's true in all of the arts. And it has to do with just being real.
Yeah.
I don't actually agree with the idea that all artistry in any field is limited entirely to personal individual experience. I think that's foolish. If you follow that down the line, no man could ever write a female character, for example.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. It would mean Leonardo da Vinci had no right to paint the Mona Lisa because he's not a woman.
Right.
You know? So this gets very silly. But it does mean that you have a well of knowledge inside you and a well of characters and voices and ideas that you can bring out, and don't be shy about that. And also don't feel that you have to do something that you think will sell.
Right.
Because actually that's the way to get nowhere. To try to say, oh, I know how to game this situation. I'll do have some of this and some of that and the other thing. And I saw this thing that was successful, so I'm going to do something like it. That's death. Um,
Yeah, because you end up making like a heartless, soulless mess.
yeah. Well, even if it's a neat mess, it is soulless if you're just trying to game the system.
Right.
You can't game the system. You can just write well.
Right. Well, there you go. I love that you mentioned having those universal human truths. And I think that that really is brilliant, because infusing characters that are on like a macro journey of a TV show with those universal truths that you can constantly be exploiting throughout the show to create drama really touches people, like doing things like loss of a loved one or something like that that we've all experienced.
Mhm. Yeah, I think those universalities are embedded in the specifics. Also, in a long form, in a television series, which is not something that will end in 1 hour or 2 hours
Yeah.
or even 4 hours, uh, there has to be such layering of characters that you're continuously revealing secrets. That means they have to have those secrets, that they have to be vertically rich.
Right.
So it's not just a matter of plot. A plot may take you 2 hours or 1 hour, but that won't suffice for a series, which is much, much, much larger than any movie, because you're going to have to continuously have, whether it's adventures for the characters or discoveries for the characters or relationships evolving. And that means digging deep.
Yeah. And you're having those secrets, you're teasing those secrets out. And then eventually, once those secrets are revealed, they open up even more secrets. And you kind of put people in this inevitable loop of secrets, keeping the audience invested, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like life. It really is that you are living through the world of the characters.
Yeah.
And as they experience things, you are emotionally experiencing them with the characters in a way that keeps you very much involved for a long time in a successful show.
Oh, absolutely. So if we can just get to the nitty gritty a little bit about an episode, if you don't mind,
Sure.
you'll have like the A, B, and C plot of a show, right?
Usually, sometimes D,
You can have a D
sometimes
plot.
well, it depends on your show. There are many television drama series that have parallel storytelling in it.
Yeah.
That means they're not subplots. They're actually stories that are usually attached to one or more of the main characters as their arc continues across multiple episodes. And so you may see, you know, Sarah going through this, and we're seeing that start, and then we're going to go over here and see what Miles is doing.
Right.
And that can be woven in many ways. Sometimes people do the entire weave of character-driven arcs and weave that through multiple episodes. Sometimes you think about how they're going to bounce off of each other within an episode, which may have its own theme. So there's quite a bit of engineering here, but it's all about the long form story,
Right.
we call the long narrative.
The long narrative. So with that A, B, and C plot, what you'll have central characters or main characters can switch back and forth. Like I know Game of Thrones is famous for this,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So you'll have one character in Game of Thrones that's the central A plot character, but then in another episode it'll be Jon Snow and it'll be somebody else.
Absolutely.
And they can with
That's
that,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Game of Thrones is extraordinary because they have the 7 kingdoms.
Yeah.
And
So-
they would help out the audience with those jumps by actually labeling it. And especially in the pilot, you'll see they really help you with those jumps because it's a completely different climate, a completely different cast. That's kind of an extreme version of what is in most shows.
Right.
You think about the expense of that and the internationality of it. In most shows, you have character-driven storylines, and you can name them that way. And it's true that somebody who is your A story in one episode may not be your A story in the next.
Yeah. And I think just looking at writing television in general is so different from writing a feature film. I really consider writing television to be more of an advanced screenwriting.
Oh, it is. It's
yeah.
much harder, much harder. People make a mistake. They say, oh, it's shorter, so it's easier. It's not shorter, it's longer. It just doesn't occur unless you're going to binge in one sitting.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I see a lot of writers will start writing pilots first, and I'll tell them, don't write the pilot, don't write television yet. Really figure out and understand 3-act structure from feature writing. And then once you have that kind of down pat, then go into television writing.
That's one possibility. The 3-act structure doesn't apply to most television, which isn't in 3 acts. It's in
5.
Traditionally, it was in 4, then it was in 5, then it was in 6. Netflix will tell you they don't believe in acts at all, but they do if you look at the actual.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, you need your grounding in good writing to write anything. And
Yeah.
that, by the way, can be also short story writing, any kind of narrative and fiction helps you become a good writer.
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of getting your head wrapped around that long form narrative of television can be so overwhelming. It's really important to have a strong base before you start dipping your toes into it. When it comes to television nowadays, what have you found that's changed with the post-pandemic, I want to say apocalyptic fallout into the film industry after they had to like stop filming and then restart? So what do you think has changed now?
Well, there are 2 ways to look at the change. One is the global changes, and the other is specific to the pandemic. Absolutely, everything shut down. It doesn't mean that writers stopped writing. And so there's a bit of a phenomenon, which is that when the industry opened up again, there was a cache of scripts that were waiting to come out there, which is both a little more competitive and
Right.
and less so because the demand is so large. So for writers, in a way, nothing stopped, although the paycheck stopped in some cases. There's a bigger change, though, afoot, which is international television, the globalization of television. There were always shows that were sent to other countries. This is even before streaming, even before there were DVDs. People used to take reels and ship them somewhere. So there was never a time when there was not an international aspect. But it's completely different now because for Netflix, the majority of the audience, people don't know this, but the majority of the Netflix audience is actually not in the US. There are other shows that aren't big in the US, but are huge around the world. Turkish television.
Oh, really? Yeah, my wife loves Turkish television. There is a whole like sub culture in America of people that love Turkish television. My wife is in like Facebook groups and she's learning how to speak Turkish.
Wow. They have a huge marketplace. And they're, interestingly, many of their viewers are in South America. I don't know exactly
That's
why.
Something. It is what it is. I mean, it's fascinating.
They're popular because, well, they do historic dramas. And so do some other countries. China certainly does, and Korea does. But those big, sweeping, dramatic histories are engaging. They have the costumes, they have all of the high stakes, and they give you a fantasy element because they're not here and now.
Right, and they fill them with beautiful people. I'm sure that doesn't hurt as well.
Oh, you bet, absolutely. Now you have to watch out for some of it, especially with the Turkish drama, which is that they are in some ways weaponizing drama series, because every expression, whether it's theatrical features or television or anything else, carries with it some cultural assumptions.
Sure.
And sometimes it's soft propaganda. that this is the way to be, this is the way to live. And sometimes it's very focused and hard propaganda.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And with Turkish television, and it's also some other countries, there is a very specific goal to respect their history.
Representing their culture. Yeah, that makes sense.
Representing their culture, but also representing their politics.
Ah.
And so, in Turkey, we're talking about, the Ottoman Empire. And, there's not everybody loves the Ottoman Empire.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have never even considered that, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a good way to use propaganda.
Well, drama has so much impact.
Yeah.
And it's soft propaganda in a way, because you think you're just loving the characters and the stories, but then you realize you're also being persuaded about their country or their lifestyle or their perspective or their version of history.
Yeah.
We do it too. I mean, nobody doesn't do it consciously or not, but in international television, you want to keep an eye on that.
Interesting.
One of the other interesting things about international television is that the US has really formed the style for the world, and many countries are now catching on that our way of doing it is the way to success. There are some few countries that are still stuck, especially France was for a long time, Germany was for a long time, stuck in the 20th century new wave idea of director-auteur.
Yeah.
Death on television. It's death on television because writers run the continuing narrative. And if you don't have that, you don't have a show.
That makes sense.
This is another very interesting thing that's happening. I got a phone call just a couple of weeks ago from a group in Mexico City who I didn't know, who had sold a show to Amazon. I don't know what they did to sell it, but they were in trouble because they had managed to sell the pilot or the concept or whatever it was that they sold. They had no clue how to go ahead and make the show.
Oh, no.
And one of the people there had an old dog-eared version of my second edition, which had been translated into Spanish. So they called me and said, we have this order for a season on Amazon, and we don't know where to start because their whole group were made of production people, directors, or people, in one case, somebody who wrote poetry or a novel, no idea how to write a show. And here they were with this order. So I told them about a writer's room and about the whole showrunner way of doing television. And I hope they adopted it because then they can do a show. They couldn't do it with a writer's room full of people who know how to work the camera.
Don't know how to write. Well, that's fascinating. Well, speaking of a writer's room, I mean, we talked about the fellowship and how people can break in through a fellowship. Do you have any other recommendations of how writers could break into the TV industry outside of competing for a fellowship?
Get a job on a show, any job.
Really, any job, yeah.
Any job. You're not going to get a job on a staff right out of the box unless your writing is incredible and you've won awards. But you can get a job, even receptionist, secretary, assistant to the assistant to somebody. Anything like that gets you in the sense of what is going on.
Right.
It will get you relationships because once you know somebody, maybe they'll be too embarrassed to tell you they don't want to read your script.
Right.
And once people start reading your script and you start making relationships, then when something opens, you may be able to be considered for it. Also, it's not unknown that people on just ordinary working positions on a show might have a chance to write a spec episode, or not a spec episode, to write an episode for a show. If that happens, if it works, listen, you could be invited onto staff after that.
That's cool.
So just get in the mix.
Get in the mix, be the assistant to the assistant if you need to, whatever you have to do to get in there and start networking.
Anything that networks you in, and also join organizations, pay attention to the Writers Guild and their committees. If there are some things that you're not allowed in the Writers Guild unless you have credits, but there are some student memberships that you can get. And there are panels and discussions and things that are open to the public. So pay attention to that, and also the Television Academy.
Any final thoughts, or is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
I think if anybody out there is wondering whether or not to go to film school to learn their craft as opposed to sitting home and writing it, go to school. Once upon a time, people were just writing on their own and hoping to submit things. Now, almost all jobs are filled through the pipeline of MFA degrees or even BFA degrees from the better film schools. So apply to one of them.
Is that because of the networking they're finding within the film school?
Partly, but it's also the craft.
Okay.
The showrunners don't have time to teach anything to anybody. They want people coming in fully aware of how to write.
Gotcha.
And how the system works. And also there are some schools that will actually hook you up with agents or other things. And so I would say this is not something you can make up. Learn your craft for this, just as if you were going to be a dentist or something, you would go to dentistry school. So learn your craft well, and read my book, because it'll tell you a lot.
And the book is Writing the TV Drama Series.
There have been many editions of the book. The 4th edition is in 2018, and the earlier editions are out of date because TV moves so fast.
No, that makes total sense. It is like it is an evolving craft, so I totally get it. Yeah, the 4th edition is the one that I have. Very good. All right, thank you again.
You're very welcome. Nice seeing you.
Hey, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter by using my handle @ScreenwriterPod. And if you liked the show, please support it by subscribing and sharing the episode on your social media.